Hi class, this is Dr. Christian. I want to do a quick tutorial on how to do a chart or a table for anything really, but specifically this landscapes change assignment. So what you're looking at, of course, are picking four variables from this list is certainly not all inclusive. There are many other elements of weathering that you can compare. But so for example, when you look at our thing link, which of course, right click, view this in a new tab, you go to this thing link and you've got the different places to go to. Here's the seed caves, that's one of them. Here's the other, the Bon Air. You know, click on each of these, engage yourself, see what everything is about. You can find out information about these, some of the locations right here. And you can go back to the original one as well. Here's one of the other places, San Andreas, so more images, takes you to Google Earth. So just explore the thing link, but what you're going to find is you essentially have 7 locations to look for, right? I even made a list here. Backdrop, that's the sea cave, so that's like number 0, and these 7 places, right? And then the 8th one is that you have to pick a place. That's why you're doing a 4x8 comparison, and everybody's worth a point. But you're going to need to make a 5x9 chart because you have to have a row and a column for the titles of these things, right? So pick the 4 things you want. And maybe like, for example, when you look at the Giant's Causeway, you see these big giant boulders. You also see that's next to the ocean. So you have what kind of tidal range do you have? This is not just high tide, low tide. Tidal range is the difference between how high and how low. Maybe it's just a very low difference between high and low, which isn't going to, do a lot of erosion up the beach, so to speak. And if, of course, you're dealing with things like the Giant's Causeway, the tidal range may not be even enough to hit the tops of the rocks to help erode them. So again, we're talking about weathering and erosion. And then of course, maybe compare that tidal range to a place that doesn't have access to the ocean. And so there would be no tidal range issue. So, this is about you applying yourself and thinking, okay, what applies to the areas that I'm comparing? So let's quickly get in then to the how do you do a table. So you are welcome to do a table in any program you want. Some people, use all Google items, and that would be making a spreadsheet. That's what Excel is. So if I need to have, 1, 2, 3, 4 categories and of comparison, these variables, and then the last column being the places, listing of my categories, I would need to do a 5, grab this corner, by 9. My mouse isn't working, a 5x9. And so I could start filling these in, and certainly you're welcome to use a spreadsheet. But after you do all that, if you're not comfortable with spreadsheets, it takes a little bit to figure out your layout. How do I come over here and make these, wider? How do I grab this little bar in between and make it, bigger? So, and then you would have to, of course, copy all this and paste it into a document. So my suggestion is to go straight to a Word document. So I'm going to open up a new Word document, and there's an insert table right here. So when you click insert and you go to table, you have a very similar layout that you just saw in Excel. So I'm going to go over 5. Now, again, you're welcome to do your paper as a portfolio, like a piece of paper. You can change your layout to be horizontal, which is called landscape. If you chose to do landscape, which some of the students have done, and they try to put these 8 locations as vertical columns instead of as horizontal rows, it gets these long skinny boxes, and that's really not the best design. So honestly, your best design is to do portrait with your smaller amount, which are your variables, those 4 different choices across, and then your different locations in the vertical. So again, I'm going to go back here to insert a table. I'm going to go over, my table is going to be 5x9. Well, this little cute chart right here only lets me do 8. So I can go ahead and do that, and then all I need to do is come all the way to the last cell in this box, and I can right click and say insert a row either above or below. It doesn't matter at this point because they're all the same size. All right, the alternative would be to insert a table and then just tell it to insert a table, and you can tell it, I want 5 columns and I want it to be 9 rows, all right? And that would be the same kind of thing. I'm going to click this and delete that one. Right click and delete the whole table. So what I like to do is go ahead and spread out my my lines, and you can do that a couple of ways. You can grab all of them and you can say right click and you can distribute your rows evenly, but they're not any different, right? Because you didn't make any changes. So one of the things is you come up here to your table design or layout. I always get confused. And you can say, how high do I want my row? And I want my row to be a little bit fatter than that. Another alternative would be to go to the last row, the last cell in that table of that row, and just hit enter. And the more you enter, that's adding more lines to the table. And as you start building the words that you're going to put in this table, you may find that you need to do that. Another thing that you might do is find that if your words are running over, let's say I get to the end, see how it's changing the width of that column? You can stop that by in this cell, right click and say table properties. And for this column, oh, hold on, for this cell, hold on, the options, cancel, hang on, lost my place. Okay, so we were in the table properties. Let's just check that again. Table properties. You're doing the entire table you want this way. You can come down here, borders and shading, you know, allow you to change the outside parts. But we would come to options and we would uncheck to automatically resize to fit the contents. Okay, so now when I do that, it will make this a, it will overlap. It'll just fold on, unfold on, and it will automatically expand the size of your boxes for you. So Control Z, that's of course the undo function. All right, so since this is your 5 by 9, these are your 4 variables. So let's say I decided I'm going to do tidal range for one of mine. I'm going to do the sediment size. So for example, Giant's Causeway would have big boulders and the beaches might have tiny sand. So maybe you decide you're going to do 3 different categories of sediment size. Perhaps you're doing, you know, the dry versus that it's rainy, or maybe you're looking at vegetation. You get to pick. Now to organize this and make it look pretty, you can grab that entire row. And again, it's either design or layout, but it's layout for what I want to do. How do you want to align your text? And you want it right here in the middle. That puts it both vertically and horizontally in the middle of that cell. You can grab cells and merge them together. You can split them back apart, cancel. Best thing to do would be to Control Z it. Control Z is undo. It takes you back, and you can do Control Z very many times. So then coming down the side here, you decide the order you want to put these locations. For example, the Bon Air Sea Caves is one location. Sorry, I'm spelling terribly. You have what? Cappadocia, and so forth and so forth, whatever the order you want to do. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 places, and the 8th one is your location. All right, and of course spelling is wrong, so let me correct that. And so outside of the table, you know, however big, enter, however big this table ends up being is based on how many words you put here. I did not uncheck that, so I hit undo too many times. I'm going to grab all of these cells and say table properties and options, and I'm unchecking that, right? Okay. Okay. Oh, did I uncheck it? Try that again. Options, uncheck. Thank you. Okay, so however many words I write in this spot, it will automatically spread that box out. Notice that over here, I have not gone to table layout and centered those things in the middle of their table. Some of you are really good at this kind of stuff and you know how to do it. So let's say I decided I want to put a row above here that describes what these variables are. So right click again at the end of the row, into the column there, and say insert a row above. And now I can merge these together, grab them all, right click, merge the cells, and I could say these are my variables. Now you don't necessarily have to do this part, Let's come over here, grab this whole column and insert a column to the left. I'm going to grab all the cells of this column and right click, merge them. And these are my locations, right? That's not the orientation I want that word. I will highlight it. I will come up here to the layout and it tells me that I can change my text direction. I can also do that by doing right click and change my text directions. There's always two ways to do everything in Excel or in Word, really Microsoft in general. So I want to turn it that way, and I can also put it in the middle. I can also go home here and make it a lot larger. Of course, you can also right click and have those same options available. I'm a fan of the right click. Okay, so all of these things start to make the table go off. That is one of the problems. So even though that this is a, my 5 is across, I can just fix that by coming up here to my layout, not my table layout, but the layout for the entire document. These two are for the table. This is for the entire document. So I would come to the orientation and I might decide to turn it landscape. And even so, I can, if these get big, 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 and this gets big, 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 and this gets big, 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 as I start entering my data, what you will find is it switches to the next page. If your titles are up here, you have a way of fixing that. So if you want this row right here to change, or even these top 2 rows, then you would grab the row you want. Let me highlight that. Right? And you would go to table properties and you would say to allow rows to break across the pages. Now, this is not a header row, so the machine is not allowing this as an option. So if that's the case, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and remove these, because honestly, you do not need to have delete the entire row. You don't need to have that. I'm going to delete this. And delete the cells, delete the entire column, and we're back to here. So this is the row that I would like to see repeated as my header row. And so now you see it's lit up. So I would say repeat this as my header row. And now you see that on the other page it is repeated. So your job will be to decide what you think are the variables. I'm not asking you to explain what your choices are. Your chart should make it clear. So based on the information that you put here, I will know what you mean by tidal range. So you might say a high tidal range, medium tidal range, or a low tidal range, or a no tidal range. Your sediments might be, you know, medium, small, large, or boulders, gravel, sand. You decide. Dry, rainy, that's pretty straightforward. Vegetation, you might have a few more words here. That is up to you how much information you want to put. Again, as the instructions say, you're not writing paragraphs in here, but you're honing in on what you call the differences among the variables that you chose. And so you begin to fill in your chart. When you're done, you're asked to, for your location outside of this table, so enter, you are to put a picture and a web address. So let's briefly talk about that. If you're done with tables, you're welcome to sayonara. But in our last 2 minutes, I want to go here to a web page, and let's say that I've decided I'm going to do, I don't know, Death Valley. So I come here to Death Valley. I say, oh, that's a cool picture. I would come here and right click, save this image as. I'm going to put it on my desktop so I can easily find it. And then when I go back, I also saw that this is going to give me a Google Maps address where you can see the latitude, longitude, or vice versa. I can either add layers to it to really make it look specific to see this is the part I'm talking about right here. But you could also do my favorite, which is to go to Google Earth. All right, by going to Google Earth on the web, you can come here and type in Death Valley and bring up the picture of Death Valley that you want to take a screenshot of and get way more cool information. So here I see that this is Google Earth Web with the same latitude and longitude. This is the address that I want to see. So Control C, come back to your Word document. That is what I want to see pasted here along with your location of your picture. You can hyperlink it if you want to. You do not have to.